Ahead and get started here. We are going to be talking today with Adam Lacy. I always like to just jump in cold. I know you just called in, and now that we've got the audio squared away, I'd like to introduce you to everybody that's going to be watching this. This is Adam Lacy, and he is at Carnivore Today channel. But that's not how I met Adam, and that's how I didn't come to know Adam that way. I actually got to know Adam as a friend of Carrie Mann over at Homestead How when they came over here recently to do some recording for the Healing Humanity documentary that they're working on. And Adam told me a little bit about his story. I mean, like just scratching the surface. And I thought you guys have got to hear this because I personally haven't heard of a story quite like this before. And I don't even know all the details. I just know this much. Adam, I don't want to give away too much of your thunder early on, but I do want to say the thing that piqued my interest was when you told me that carnivore diet helped you to reverse brain damage. And, you know, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, what kind of brain damage is? Did you fall on your head? Were you dropped when you were a kid? I mean, there's all kind of things that can cause that possibly. And I guess my first thought is to think, well, it couldn't have been that bad, really. You know, I'm sure you probably run into some of that kind of thing. But before we get into all of what changed, how about you tell me a little bit about yourself to get started, and then you can also tell us what happened that led you to where you were, and then what led you to a carnivore way of eating as the solution, because it certainly doesn't sound like what most people would think of. Normal life, something happened, started eating meat. That's the solution. So we're going to find out today. Take it away,
Yeah,
Adam.
awesome. Thank you so much, Dante, for inviting me on. It's an absolute pleasure. For those that don't know, Dante has a large influence in me and my journey, and I can share that a little bit later. But as far as my background goes, I'm married. I have two kids. They're both out of the house. I'll probably get this wrong, 27 and 28. They're old now, living on their own. So they're not my responsibility anymore, right? Um, so married to a beautiful wife. I am actually a professional photographer by trade. I own my own sports photography business that does volume photography. It's more high-end work that we actually do. So we do roughly 20 to 25,000, somewhere in that frame of individuals that we photograph every single year. So there's a lot of kids and youth that we actually photograph. So, but the setup that we have is it's a professional setup. It's the same setup that you would see for the actual president of the United States. We're very proud of what we're able to do and the value that we're able to bring to the community. So yeah, I own that business, and then also on the side, I also help with the documentary Healing Humanity. Um, but let's rewind and go back to the reason why I had this brain damage. So let me go back even farther than that, actually. So when I was a kid, I was actually very active in sports, baseball, soccer, mainly martial arts. And I was on the demonstration team. I was on the sparring team. I was a coach for the U.S. Youth Taekwondo Championships for some of the younger kids, second degree junior black belt in Taekwondo at the time, and brown sash in Kung Fu. So my balance was always impeccable. And even through my adult years after our kids were born, and I started to put on that pregnancy weight, right? My balance still was maintained, impeccable balance. And so fast forward to 2017, and I was on my way to work at a prior job, which was electrical engineering job. So I was a controls engineer, and I was on my way to work, 7 a.m. in the morning on the highway. Traffic was stopped in front of me, and we were going down about a 2% grade. And I was in the fast lane. Everything was going fine. Everybody was stopping normal. And I just so happened to look up in my rearview mirror, and I see this giant semi, like
Oh my
very,
gosh.
very close. He's closing in super rapid on us. Now, when he impacted the first car, um, all I could see, it was like you're in the Matrix, like an explosion of parts and pieces just flying everywhere. He hit that hard. It's 53-foot trailer loaded with coiled steel. So, and he didn't hit
Man.
the brakes. Yeah, we didn't find this out until afterwards, obviously, but didn't stop at all. He smashed into the first car. That car smashed into the next car. That car smashed into me. And then I went up the wall, the median wall, and with my truck. And I got a pretty big size truck. It's like 7,000 pound truck. It went up the wall, came back down the wall, and came down on top of another car. So even being third in line, that's how hard this guy hit me because I sustained these head injuries and back injuries. I actually got sciatica from it as well.
Mm.
So yeah, that was that. From the moment of impact, I don't remember anything. It's basically a hole. I still can't recall exactly what happened in that time frame. I remember coming to, and I was in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, and yeah, it was a crazy ride after that of just trying to determine what's wrong with my body. And uh, obviously I didn't know what was wrong because I was laying down at the time, but as soon as I stood up, I knew that there was something wrong. Something wasn't right. My balance was off. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it came to be, as far as the brain damage, actually, when it happened.
Wow. Sounds like you're lucky to be alive. And did you
Yeah.
say your family was in the car with you?
No, it was just me. I was on my way to work. So thankfully, no one else was involved from the family. But the first car that was hit didn't fare well. They passed away, and the second car they were injured pretty decent as well. So, I consider myself grateful that I ended up with the small amount of injuries that I actually did, because we had just purchased that truck as well. So it was like, $40,000 truck. Truck prices are obscene, right?
Yeah.
But it did almost $20,000 in damage to my truck.
Mm.
So yeah, it was, and I was third in line. So the guy just
So
wasn't paying attention.
so what did the doctors have to say about your brain ability to recover and things like that? I mean, were you on a long process after that, or were you able to get back to work at any certain amount of time, or what
Well,
was
I
it
was
like
actually
recovering?
try to retrace those steps a little bit. So I know I was on uh, partial days for a long time, but I was off for approximately 2 weeks, and then they gave me partial days, 2 hours a day, and I could hardly make that 2 hours a day, and that was for weeks, probably like 8 weeks. I was on 2 hours a day, and then doctor gave me clearance to bump that up to like 4 hours a day, and then I could go to 6 hours a day, and then a full day. But this process took probably 6 months, and I had a very understanding employer. I can't even imagine being in their position, right? Like, you got this employee, you need work done, but this guy can only be here for 2 hours, right? And he's probably not 100% while he's here. So I'm very thankful to John and Daryl for sticking it out with me through that time, because that was very, very, very tough. So it was approximately 6 months then that I was actually able to start getting back to work full time, but I everything was still off, right? Like, I still had vertigo symptoms, I still had balance issues,
Mm.
um, I still had motor tics. So I don't know if you've ever noticed somebody that has Tourette syndrome, where their head jerks and twitches and things like that. So that happened to me. So once I would get to that 2 hour mark at work, or that 4 hour mark, a lot of times it was actually before then, my head would start jerking, and it was incredibly embarrassing. I couldn't control it whatsoever. And for somebody that's always, basically been okay health, nothing really like majorly wrong. I mean, it was very embarrassing to have to go through that, and have people ask you, what's wrong with you, and you don't really know, like, you were hitting the head big time, but the doctors are saying essentially that this may resolve itself, but chances are it's likely not going to resolve itself. You're gonna live with this brain damage forever. It's permanent.
So processing this from the inside of having brain damage is a very difficult thing to express, I'm sure, because you're not able to really make sense of what's going on with some of those things. And that's what it was like early on, especially. I can't even imagine that you were able to get a whole lot of work done feeling like that. That's kind of amazing to me that you were able to press on.
Well, I didn't say how efficient I was,
Yeah,
but
well,
I was doing everything I could. I didn't want to lose the job, so I was doing a lot of straining, probably more than I probably should, and maybe that prolonged things and made things worse. I'm not sure. It's really hard to tell with when it comes to things with the brain.
so that went on for about 6 months. You're kind of just suffering through, uh, muscling through it. That's what a lot of us have to do every day, it seems like, and these days more than any other. But when you're dealing with a brain injury, that's a strong will to muscle through, man. I gotta admire that. So what happened after 6 months when you?
Well, once I hit that 6 month mark, it basically nothing really changed from the 6 month mark through the next 4.5 years. So
Okay.
basically, I had this impairment where my balance was messed up. If I closed my eyes, I would fall over, right? If I was sleeping in the bed and I closed my eyes and it was totally dark, I would get vertigo effects. The room would start
Oh,
spinning. Yeah, so I'd have to have the lights on in order to fixate on the horizon and just lay there with my eyes open as long as I possibly could, and then pass out, essentially go to sleep. Um, if I would walk in buildings like a shopping mall, and it had a long corridor or where you could see for a long distance indoors, vertigo effects, like everything would literally start spinning, and I'd have to sit down and manage that. But and then of course the motor tics, those still persisted for the next, basically from in 2017 when I had the accident until 5 years later when I actually started on the carnivore diet. They were still present then, but so yeah, I don't know if you want to get into that now or not.
well, I like kind of feeling like how serious this was, because just the word brain damage, the two words brain damage, bring to mind like, wow, permanent. This is it. You're stuck with this. This is like, you don't know how to deal with it. The poor person doesn't know how to deal with it, because when you have a illness that people can't see, it's very difficult sometimes even on the person who has the illness, just because other people can't see it, because you got to explain it all the time. And if you have a hard time explaining it because it's brain related, that's got to be even harder. So I'm just trying to get a feel for what it was like going through this. How were your communication skills during this time period?
Communication skills, I would say, were okay. Everything was slower, slower to respond, slower to react with everything. Um, but yeah, that's a good point that you bring up. You know, you want to push yourself and get out there, and you can do certain things in spurts. But once the brain was overloaded, that was it. It was done. Typically I would get a migraine so intense that I would just have to go to sleep until the next day, just sleep it off. Um, so yeah, it was really hard to kind of demonstrate that there was actually anything going on. And because there was a lawsuit, insurance companies got involved and all that sort of thing with the trucking company. They forced you to do neuropsychological exams, basically to see, are you a crazy person? Are you telling the truth? It's almost like a lie detector test. Of course, I passed that with flying colors, but it's so intense, I could only take half of it. So the concentration that was needed in order to do this test, I was only actually able to do half of it, and then I had to come back and finish.
Hmm. So this went on for 4.5 years. You kind of left it untreated in a way. I mean, you were
Mm-hmm.
just struggling through with what you could do. The only treatment per se was any investigation being done by the lawsuit and your doctor's looking at it and seeing where you're going. But I've had some experience with doctors where, especially when it deals with nerve pain, and none of them seem to know what they're talking about, but they all act like they know what they're talking about. And sometimes I think it's a little scary when you're dealing with all that. You had mentioned, doggone it, this is one of those
Now,
things.
I did go to physical therapy. So
Okay.
I was in physical therapy, I was in speech therapy, and I was occupational therapy for 2 years. Every single week I was in therapy, and it did have some beneficial effects. Looking back in hindsight, I think it's more than likely my brain kind of just did its own thing based on the nutrients that I was giving it. Maybe some of that stuff helped. A lot of it was balance exercises, vision exercises. Uh, Speech therapy was very strange. Some of the things that we did in there, it wasn't just linguistically talking. A lot of different things that we had to do there. Matter of fact, because I was eating a standard American diet back then, I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but it's kind of funny. So the speech therapist would always get on me. Why are you clearing your throat? Because I would always, clear my throat. And it irritated her to no end. Looking back now, I know, well, it's because of the dairy that I was drinking. I know that now based on how I eat, but anyways, so yeah, I went through therapy for 2 years. I would say that things improved. They said I had 10% brain damage. So I lost 10% of my brain function. And I feel like I got back up to around maybe 95%, like maybe 5% came back, but I still had the motor tics. I still had headaches once I was overloaded. I still had some of the balance issues going on. And yeah, so
I've commented each time you've mentioned the balance issues, because I don't know if people can really grasp what a big deal that is unless you've had them. I went through a bout where I had vertigo and dizziness for like a week back in 2010, and don't know what it was. It was probably something related to an inner ear infection or something like that. But whatever it was, it is enough to make you want to go insane. When you, like you described, laying in bed and feeling like you're spinning, when you're trying to lay down and get that feeling to go away, and that's when it hits you the hardest. It just feels like there's no escape from this difficulty, and not feeling like you can stand up. I mean, talk about being scary, especially if you're a relatively tall or heavier guy. And at that time, I was probably around 260, 270. So the idea of falling down, I was staying in a house that was like a manufactured home. I could go through the floor if I fell in a place like that.
Oh,
So
no.
it's scary to think about when you can't stand up. And even when you lay down because you can't stand up, the room is spinning. It's terrible. It is enough to make you crazy. So if that was still going on, to me, that's a lot right there. Struggling with speech, struggling with motor tics, and being able to focus, I guess. You said you had focus issues after 2 hours too?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the 2 years of therapy, it would probably take me a good 8 to 10 hours of the day before everything would just shut down. And, I'd have to sit down and rest. It wouldn't be to the migraine point at that point. But if I did anything extra in the evening for myself, a hobby or whatever, anything that required thought, it would get me to that point where my brain is just like, all right, we've hit the cutoff point. We're done. We're going to have an intense migraine now, and you're going to have to go to sleep this off, because there's no other way to get rid of it. Obviously I would take Tylenol, pain relievers and things like that in order to try to relieve it, but it didn't help.
How did your wife, how was it for your wife dealing with this change and everything? And I'm sure she was supportive. I mean, just like to hear your story on it, going through
Yeah,
this.
she was very supportive. And she probably wouldn't say this, but I know it had to have frustrated her as well, because she didn't have her husband, right? I was basically non-existent for probably at least 3 to 4 years. And it did, I feel like it did change me. It changed how I seen the world, things just changed. I can't put my finger on it, but there's definitely a marked change from that date moving forward. And I feel like it's more the expression of empathy. Um, and I've heard that from several other people as well that have had head injuries that or concussions that they've had this issue as well. So it's not that I don't feel empathy. I do. I'm a very passionate kind of a person, but expressing that is a lot harder to do now. And when you're in a marriage, it's important to express those things, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, she's had to deal with some of that, but she's actually an occupational therapist, a kick butt occupational therapist. So that helped out as well, having that at home. So if I didn't have that at home as well, I probably would have been in a worse condition than what I was. So,
Well, what a blessing for you, and hopefully a blessing for her to be able to have been in the right field to take care of the person she loves like that. That's pretty remarkable. So after 4.5 years, you somehow at some point came across Carnivore. What even brought it
yeah,
into your purview? I mean, were you were
right,
you were you heavy? Was that because most people, they come into Carnivore as a diet, and that's why
right,
we'd like to try to point out this is not a weight loss diet. It's great
right,
for losing weight, but this is a total body change, healing, getting away from the poisons that are in the food that we have now, the things that we've done to the food over the centuries that meat, especially ruminant meat, seems to be impervious to for the most part, with the exception of some things, but it's like the healthiest option. How did that come on your radar? Was it to do with losing weight? Because you mentioned you had on some of the baby fat, and I guess when you're, the having a child and being married and happy, uh,
right.
how did you get to the carnivore diet as an option for something that might actually help this? I mean, did it even cross your radar as helping with brain damage, or was it something else?
That was not even close to what I was thinking in terms of because the all of the specialists and therapists and doctors that I went to, they all said this is permanent, like it's never going to change, and I felt like it was going to be permanent. When I was ill in the past, I would be able to, just get a cold, it's gone in a week or two, right? Or any other issue, and this one just persisted, so I just assume that this is going to be here forever. But kind of rewind a little bit. After I had finished the therapy, even during the therapy, I was kind of eating standard American diet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was eating garbage. And then 2 years prior to me starting the carnivore diet, my business partner actually contracted prostate cancer. So as part of that, his regiment and his protocol with trying to beat this cancer, he found another guy that went on this diet, a vegan diet. It was essentially a raw vegan diet, like juicing and all kinds of crazy stuff. So, in solidarity with him, I decided, bro, I hate vegetables, but I'm going to do this with you, right? Like I couldn't stand vegetables even back then. And I had to put, butter on it or bacon on it or whatever just to make it taste good. But so, so fast forward 2 years. So I'm eating this raw vegan diet for 2 years. And I started to notice an autoimmune condition that I have, vitiligo. It's around my waist. I don't show any pictures of it because it's kind of in a spot that I don't want people to see, right? So, but it started to show up maybe 18, 20 months into eating this raw vegan diet. It started showing up on my arm. And I thought, oh my God, if this ends up on my face, like I, I'm just, nobody would care, right? But I would care. So I thought, I have to stop this somehow, some way. And the doctors have all said that you basically can't do much about that either. There's very expensive treatments that you
Mm.
can try to do things with it, but it's hit or miss whether it actually even does anything. So I did a search on YouTube, how to reverse vitiligo, right? And for
I've never even
those that are
heard of
listening
it.
that don't know what it is, it's actually there's patches on your skin that you're not able to produce melanin in those areas. So it's like white spots. People with darker skin, I kind of got a medium brown skin, and it would be very prevalent, especially if it was on my face. So I'm like, okay, YouTube University, teach me something. Can you actually like fix this, right? And the first video that I came across was Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan was talking about his same condition, vitiligo, and that it was actually reversing after 30 days on a carnivore diet. And I thought, what in the world is a carnivore diet? I had never heard of that, right?
Right.
So then I start down the rabbit hole, right, quote unquote. And I searched carnivore diet, and the very first video that popped up was Mr. Dante.
I was the first one that popped up after Joe Rogan turned you in that direction.
Yes, you were the very first one. And I watched your video where, you basically started and you look like you had some health issues going on, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, let's see how this goes. And then you just transformed. And I'm like, my God, this is not even the same person, right? So that was extremely compelling to me, that here's this regular dude. He is saying, I don't know what's happening to me, right? Based on eating meat. So that was very inspiring. Like, okay, I got to do this. But of course, you have the society tells you red meat's going to kill you, right? Red meat's going to give you cancer. It's going to give you heart disease and all these things. So I went a little bit further with it and found Dr. Berry. And you could just tell this guy was being 100% genuine. He wasn't selling anything. He's just saying, hey, listen, eat food from this section of the grocery and don't eat it from this section of the grocery. Like literally, that's it. I'm like, well, heck, I can do that, right?
Yeah.
So it was, I jumped in both feet. I didn't give it any, transition time or anything like that. I probably should, because I spent more time in the restroom than I think I probably needed to if I had transitioned slowly. But within 3 days, plantar fasciitis that I had for 2 years, intense pain. I couldn't stand for longer than 30 minutes, and I'd have to sit down for about 2 hours. Special shoes.
That's the muscle between your heel and your big toe, the big knot on the front of your foot there, right? The arch.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I started for a skin condition that's something that's totally vain, right?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. There's no pain, or it doesn't itch or anything like that. It's all visual, but it's an indicator that there's something wrong.
Right.
So I'm trying to reverse that, and this plantar fasciitis goes away, and I have to wear a special boot at night, right, to try to stretch this thing out. I had to buy $500 pairs of shoes to relieve the pain so I could walk longer. Yeah. In 3 days, the pain started to go away. By day 5, that pain 100% gone, and it has not come back.
That's crazy. I got to make some notes real quick, just because this is like a lot more than I thought. The vitiligo, and you had plantar fasciitis.
Yes, I can send you a list, because it's quite the list.
I
also had osteoarthritis.
I don't know how much I can fit in the thumbnail when I put this out there, but I mean, I want to be able to. This is the reason I do this, as you probably well know, is I know there are people out there with these varying conditions that they've been able to treat on a carnivore way of eating, and nobody knows about it, or not nobody, but most people are not aware of it. And right now it's kind of like on the fringe of conspiracy kooky stuff, according to the mainstream, but that's because the mainstream wants to keep control of all their pharmaceuticals and their food companies and their deal with the government. So I mean, we understand why that's happening, but there are people changing their lives, and the only way people are going to know, somebody's going to go out there and look up, can you reverse brain damage? Can you reverse vitiligo? Can you reverse plantar fasciitis? These little things that I'm going to try to make sure they're in here so they can hear your story, and then maybe they'll try it, and then somebody else will know, and it just keeps spreading to make more people happy and healthy. And that's why I love doing these conversations, because it gets the human side of what's happening here. I love what Dr. Berry and Dr. Baker do, because they bring to us something that we're used to having with some authority. We know we're used to being able to trust our doctors. At least I am, from 52 years of being on this earth, or at least it will be in 5 days, 52 years. Uh, and you're what, 40 something, I believe.
48.
So you've been around long enough to see how this works. And we're used to trusting government entities and medical professionals. So it's nice to have some medical professionals who are coming out and saying, I could have kept going along to get along and doing the plan that wasn't working, but I used my eyes and my brain and said, what I'm doing is not working. And they saw what some other people were doing that was working, and they actually looked into it rather than taking the easy route and keeping the paycheck coming in. Thank God for them. So I never want to say that what I'm doing beats what they're doing. I think it's a wonderful combination of all the new people who have come onto YouTube, like yourself and like me and many others that are out there who are sharing these stories, because otherwise this information is not going to get out there. It's hard. I was surprised to see, I think it was Time Magazine or something did an article on carnivore recently that they were just trying to look into it. I don't know if it was, I think it was Time. I know I saw 60 Minutes down in Australia doing something on a carnivore situation going on. So it's starting to creep in there. Heck, Newsweek contacted me about a year ago to find out about the story a little bit. And I thought, okay, well, it's interesting. I'm not really a big fan of Newsweek, but if it'll get more eyeballs on this way of eating, then that's good. And that's why we're here. So we've, and Vitaligo, let me see, maybe I can show this on the screen here real quick. That way we don't have to show yours, and people will understand that what we're dealing with is a skin pigmentation change that looks like that.
Yep. Yeah, I've got that all around my waist, and some spots started to show up on my arms, and I thought, oh my God. Like you see, like what is it? Sports Illustrated swimsuit. They try to work in, people of different types, body types. And they have one of the ladies that's has that same condition, but she's like a mixed lady. So she's got darker skin, and she's got like these big white patches on her face. And I was just like, oh, I don't want that to happen, because kids are brutal.
Yeah. Well, God bless them for having to deal with it. Obviously, it's nobody wants to say somebody doesn't look nice because of something they can't help, but
right.
Nobody wants to have that on themselves either. So it's clearly when you said it was vain earlier, I thought this is not quite vanity in my opinion, but I mean, it's trying to fit into a society without feeling like you're being looked at all the time for something that you have no control over. But finding out you had some control over it had to be a nice surprise.
Yeah. So actually the spots that I have, they actually started to reverse. So there's probably like maybe a 20% change. It hasn't gotten any better than that, but the fact that it hasn't spread anymore, hey, I'm fine with it.
Step in the right direction. And you've been doing carnivore diet now for how long?
Since February 1st of 2023. So what is that?
Well, that'll give us 4 months. It'll be 2 years.
Yep.
Okay.
So absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, so along with that, when you talked about it being tough as far as having to deal with these motor tics and, the vertigo and things like that, and it was quite depressive, right? So
I can imagine.
I would get in this state of mind where I was depressed, very severely depressed, not to the point where I would ever seek mental help, because I was raised be a man, like you're not going to show any kind of weakness in that regard, especially if you wanted to maybe ever own a firearm or something like that, and you have to disclose that you've had some kind of mental whatever evaluation.
I'm right there with
whatever
you.
It would be. Right. So I would never disclose that. And it was pretty bad. I was very frustrated with myself. I'd yell at myself, like, quit doing that. And I couldn't help it. It'd be different if I was yelling at myself, or if I was frustrated because I was fat, because I'm the one that was doing that. Right. But I didn't cause my head injury. So it was very, very frustrating that, all this treatments that I went through and exercises and things that it didn't really get rid of it. So
You
the
were mad at
depression was
yourself
there.
because you weren't doing what you wanted you to do, right? Would that be a good
Absolutely.
way of putting it? You were angry at yourself.
Yes, I was very much so. And anxiety was through the roof. Kerry from Homestead How, he likes to mention that if he had a meeting, sometimes he would daydream about driving his car into a ditch just to have an excuse to not have a meeting. And I had anxiety that was it was that bad as well. You know, as a photographer, I put people on camera. I'm not on camera, so to have this way of eating also solved the depression, anxiety. I have a zest for life now. Like it's more than just removing the depression and anxiety. It's like it's replaced with joy and happiness, right? I'm actually happy to get up now because I can share this message with others. Um, I don't know, for some people this may sound extraordinary, right? Like this is conspiracy theory level stuff with all the things that it has actually helped. But I have nothing to gain by sharing any of this stuff. I used to eat pain medication, Tylenol, like M&Ms. And that's all gone. I don't have to do any of that anymore. Osteoarthritis that I was diagnosed with, that's 100% gone. That was almost in
Wow.
every single joint in my body. Um, like you had alluded to earlier when we talked earlier, sunburns. I don't get sunburned anymore. I can stay in the sun for Lord knows how long, and before actually, y'all get overheated if I'm not drinking or something like that. But
Yeah.
I might get a little red, but it goes away, within a day, which is insane.
Yeah. If I spend about 6 hours out on an inner tube going down a river, I'll get a little bit of a sunburn still. But I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. Used to be if I
Right.
was out there for an hour, I'd have sunburn and be peeling the next day. So now I can
Right.
spend 4 or 5 hours out there and I'm usually fine. But if you're staying on the water for a long enough time, I tell people, yes, you will still burn. Radiation still has an effect, but it seems to have a much less effect on carnivore. And a lot of people allude that that is because of the reduction of seed oils and how it interferes with our skin's ability to grab the nutrients from the sun rather than just the radiation. So that's very interesting. And the thing about Tylenol too, that you were needing that so often. Did you know that they put Tylenol in like not what is it? Hydrocodone and oxycodone for that matter. They put Tylenol in with those painkillers, those narcotic painkillers, not to add a analgesic effect of some kind. It's simply to make it poisonous enough for you not to want to take too many. That is
Really?
why they add that to those medicines. This is what I learned as an administrator at a
Wow.
retirement home talking to doctors, and I confirmed that for 2 doctors. And I thought that is crazy, but kind of takes me back to the days back when the prohibition, they started putting poison in the alcohol that they were using for industrial purposes simply because they knew people were drinking it anyway. It's like, well, if they're not going to follow the law, we're just going to kill them. That's
Oh
the
my goodness.
weird thing. But Tylenol in large enough doses is poisonous for us. And if that was what you had to take in large doses, it's like, how is this helping me to take literal poison just so I can deal with symptoms? And
Right.
you found a different
Yeah.
way. But so the carnivore diet started to help with the skin was the original reason why you started doing it. And then you
Hmm.
started to notice the plantar fasciitis went away, the
Yep.
osteoarthritis, and that's your standard like my joints hurt from age and
Yep.
use and stuff like that.
Yep.
And then the sunburn is a nice bonus. Uh,
Right.
but when did you? And if there's more, go ahead. But when did you start to notice? Hey, wait a minute, something's working better here than it was before. Starting to feel a little more normal, or whatever happened. How did it happen?
Yeah. Great question. So it happened gradually. It didn't happen, like a switch. I actually, to be honest with you, I didn't even notice it because it happened so gradually. It was about 5 months in that I noticed I'm not doing those head ticks anymore. Like my head's not jerking like some crazy person, right? And then I was just kind of caught up in this realization where I'm like, am I really not doing it, or am I just not paying attention that I'm doing it?
Am I
Right.
just used to doing it and I don't notice it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So kind of along the lines of, I was 80 pounds overweight. I didn't start with weight loss, but I lost 80 pounds. Right. And then you end up with what I call ghost belly, right? Where when you're overweight, you're trying to suck it in, and then once you lose the weight, I found myself still trying to suck it in. Like, what am I doing? It's gone. I don't need to do
I
that
know.
anymore.
I know. Body dysmorphia is a common thing I've found among people who are used to carrying a lot of weight, and then when they lose it all, they still feel that way. I suffer from it even after this long. I still feel like I have that problem, and then I look at the scale and I'm like, you're under 200 pounds. Never in your adult life have you been under 200 pounds. Why are you complaining? Why are you thinking anything is wrong? And I did it when I was a teenager. So, it could be some psychological tick that I have from very early on, because I remember taking a picture when I was 17 and I was standing there holding this big sea bass that I had just caught on South Padre Island. And I had these little tiny love handles, and I was so nervous I had to hold the fish so that my elbows were blocking the love handles. And when I look at that picture now, I think I didn't even block anything. I didn't have anything. What was I worried about? So there is something I think about when you've been heavy and you lose that weight. It's hard to unlive that experience again, because it's especially when you grew up in the 70s and 80s, it can be really traumatic. It seems, because kids could get away with murder. Nowadays, they're all being recorded, so they got to be careful what they say, I guess. I don't know what it is.
Right. Good point.
So anyway, you were noticing the slight changes.
Yeah.
And at some point, did your wife say, like, hey, I notice, I don't know. I mean, was just the ticks was the first thing that you noticed went away?
Yeah. And well, not necessarily. The headaches went away first. So I did notice that the headaches were starting to get better. But to me, that was like, it was related to the brain damage, but people get headaches all the time. That's not related to brain damage. So just like, maybe this is something, maybe it isn't, right? So those went away, and then the balance issues, my balance started to come back, right? And I'm like, this is unreal, like what's happening to me, because the only thing that I did was change the way that I eat. Exercise to me was a 4-letter word. So ever since, back in martial arts, when I started working and then got married, there's no exercise whatsoever.
That was my youth.
Yeah, right. So for my balance to improve without actually doing anything physical, like I was with therapy, it just blew my mind. And then I noticed I wasn't doing the ticks anymore. And by this time, the depression and anxiety had already started to lift before I even noticed that stuff, which was, it's amazing. Like, to me, the carnivore diet is almost a miracle in what it does with people. Some people say that it is, or say that it's just, physiological. It's all a matter thing, but man, it's almost a religious experience, all the changes that I've had. And I really feel like I'm fulfilling my destiny now and doing what I need to be doing and helping others to heal. And that's one of the reasons why I volunteered to help Carrie with the documentary project.
Well, I'm really glad that you did. It is miraculous in my opinion, because the miracle we're witnessing, from my experience, is the miracle of we stopped eating what men came up with for us to eat so that they could make maximum profits with minimal effort. And we started eating what God put here on this earth for us to eat in the way that it was intended to be eaten. Personally, I think that vegetables and fruits could be in that, but we have destroyed them through the monoculture raising of crops and the way that they crossbreed everything, and then they genetically modify so many things, and then they what do? They patent seeds, and then you can't even get the original seeds of a lot of these fruits and vegetables that were available. So we've made them sweeter, more toxic, and then we wonder why I'm eating healthy food and I'm getting sick, But the thing about meat is that it doesn't have the drawbacks that the vegetables and stuff have, because the vegetables can't separate out the toxins. We're making the toxins stronger as we're growing them. Whereas with the cows, for instance, the way a ruminant animal stomach works, it pulls those toxins out. And that's what makes that's still the natural version of what we can get. I think if we hadn't ruined our vegetables and fruits, and if you can still get some heirloom and grow your own, you can probably do great, especially for maybe young people who are eating a normal diet, but they're eating a diet of natural food. It would be fine. In your case, and in my case, we spent, at least 40 years, in my case, it was 48 years of eating a diet that was made by man for the purpose of being cheap and addictive. And then it changed my body. And now my body needs that pure form of food that miraculously was put here, that God made for us to be able to eat. That's my personal belief in it. And it is a miracle that I've experienced it, because so many people are trapped inside of this machine of big food and big pharma and big government, just cycling us all through this machine that makes money for everybody involved except for the people who they're supposedly helping.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I agree with you 100%. And to your point on finding heirloom seeds and growing your own food, I tried that when 2019, 2020 hit. I thought, let's be self-sustaining, right? And that's around the time I got my settlement from the accident. So I was able to pay off all the medical bills, and then we had a little bit left over. And look, in hindsight, I probably should have kept that for future issues that I had with my head. But because that thing happened around that time, we need to be self-sufficient, right? And grow our own food. So this is before I ever heard of the carnivore diet. So starting to grow, tomato plants and peppers and potatoes and okra and broccoli and spinach and carrots and all this stuff. And, I wanted to pride myself on it being organic, right? All organic. But I would caution anyone that wants to go that route, because it's you versus nature. So either you're going to eat or they're going to eat if you're going to keep it organic, right? And not spray and kill the bugs and kill the pests and kill the animals. You're going to have to shoot rabbits. You're going to have to shoot squirrels. You're going to have to shoot, kill the moles and the voles, kill any deer if you live out in the open, because you're essentially growing food for them, right? So it's a competition. And if you're not ready for that, it's going to take acres and acres and acres to grow organic food without killing animals and bugs, just so you have something to eat.
And they start a lot earlier than we do. Get out there eating your food.
Yeah.
So by the time you get there, it's all gone.
Yeah, exactly. I planted a row of peas and they started to pop up, and my wife and I are like, oh, this is so beautiful. Look at this. They're all in a row and they're getting ready to start climbing the trellis. And the next morning we came out there and a rabbit had chewed down every single one of them. Mowed them all down.
My wife still tries to, she's a planter. She loves to plant and grow plants and trees and everything. She likes to have as much natural as she can going on. It seems to be a nonstop battle of watching plants die. Meanwhile, the trees in my yard that I don't want there just stay until they fall over on something important. But she's got to work to keep all those plants going. But I see how much work she puts into just trying to keep plants available, because she likes to do little spices and things like that. She's never gone full carnivore. She did for a couple of months, like a month at a time, 2 different times, but she hasn't been able to stick with it like I'd like to see her do. Mm-hmm. But geez, I'm getting sidetracked because I'm talking about her carnivore experience. But what I was going to say is that your experience was on a vegan attempt too. You were trying to go straight raw vegan, and that's why you were doing all that stuff. So I didn't want to. I didn't want to conflate the idea that I was trying to encourage people to go that route with what I was saying about vegetables should be okay for us. But I mean, throughout history, they've been something that people have eaten. It's just that we've changed them. And I don't think that we can come back down that road all that easy. But one road we can come down easy is getting access to meat that is healthy and clean, because these animals are able to remove all those different things. Even the antibiotics and stuff they give to those animals, it's able to be weeded out more so from them than it is something like a vegetable where you spray something on it. And they use glyphosate to harvest these crops and things like that. That's what they're feeding to you. They're giving you all these poisons, and it makes it really hard to incorporate vegetables into the idea, from my opinion. And I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm not much of a homesteader. I mean, I've always told everybody, look, I was a lazy guy as far as I want to just have fun. That was always my thing, is just have fun. But when it came to working, I was a go-getter at the same time. So I was able to make enough to have fun. But when it comes to doing all this exercise and having to want to cook and all these other things, I'm like, I haven't got time for all that stuff. And when it comes to trying to do that with vegetables, that's just like a whole nother ballpark that I can't get into. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people that can't either. But for those who can and those who want to, I am not discouraging you from doing that. But I would encourage you, definitely don't make that the only part of your diet. There's just not enough in vegetables that are going to keep you sustained. There's things in meat that you need that you're not going to get from vegetables. A lot of people like to argue vitamin C is not enough in meat, but if you're not eating sugar, you really don't need vitamin C. And the proof of that is the fact that in the last 2 years, I have been sick all of 24 hours when I used to get sick on a regular basis every year, at least twice, if not 3 times a year from something. Antibiotics were a regular part of my annual thing, and now I don't get sick. And I don't take vitamin C, and I don't eat anything that has any extra amounts of it other than the meat that it comes with, yet I stay healthy. And that's what everybody says, get vitamin C so you won't get a cold. My kids can come home from school sick, I won't get sick. So the thing about it is if you're going to eat vegetables, that's the small part. That's when you can't afford to eat meat for all intents and purposes. That was what they fed the poor people back then. That was how they fed the masses. Would give them vegetables. We're the ones eating the meat up here. So I think that's the miracle part, is that, meat is the miracle that God gave us a long time ago, and it just happens to be still around, and it's doing a good job at turning around a lot of the damage that we have done over the past century of big food, mixing in artificial ingredients, and then just trying to get us addicted to their products. Finding out the tobacco companies took over the food companies back in the 70s and 80s was like, hello.
Right.
That explains a lot. Yeah. Heck, I even bought the whole cigarette lie for many years, thinking that, well, I know they're not good for me. I want them though. So leave me alone. Let me have my freedom. I didn't realize how they were using us and lying to us, and that the whole thing with the doctors approving it was a real thing at one time. So it's like the passage of time. Sometimes we don't realize how much propaganda has led us up to a certain point. Like, I thought smoking was fine when I was younger. I knew it wasn't something that was good for you in the long run, but it was like, leave me alone. Now I look at it as, no, this is something that I don't need to do. It's not healthy. It's not good for me. And it's expensive. But people don't realize the food has changed. Like people, your kids, for example, they've seen this ultra processed world that they've grown up in, that even we didn't grow up in. Go back another generation and it was like everything was homemade. So it's only been a few generations that we've done this huge amount of damage to ourselves. And to be able to get back to it with something as simple as meat is great. Now we just got to encourage more farmers to get back into the meat process. While we're on the diet that you did, what was the diet that you, what type of meat did you eat? What was your daily meal like? Like, how did you get started, and what would somebody who's in your shoes want to look to put on their plate, maybe, if they wanted to emulate you?
Absolutely. So I started with beef butter, bacon, and eggs, and I have effectively stayed on that the entire time. I have cut out butter because I did have adult acne as well that I don't really have anymore. Now, occasionally I'll have the carnivore ice cream, and knowing full well that it's going to cause skin issues with me for like 3 months before it clears up. So
Is that the carnivore ice cream like Rebel ice cream at the store, keto ice cream, or is that something you made yourself? That's like a
yeah, you make it yourself. It's made with raw eggs, heavy whipping cream, a little bit of salt, and then you can add a little bit of vanilla extract or bean or whatever if you want to. But yeah, it's because it tastes a little weird. There's always so much left over, and I'm like, I don't want it to go to waste, right? So I end up eating the whole thing over like 3 or 4 days, and I don't know, it's maybe a half gallon or something like that. But it causes skin issues with me for months and months. But so yeah, effectively, I got rid of the dairy altogether. No cheese whatsoever. Bacon, I naturally just weaned off of for some reason. And mainly, I think it was because it's such a pain in the butt to cook, right? Like everybody says, oh, try it this way. It's so much easier or that way. You still got a big old mess, you have to clean up. So I'm lazy like yourself. I just want to cook a piece of meat and eat it and be done with it. Like I want to do something else other than eat.
And then the package isn't even resealable.
Right. Exactly. And then it warms up and then you can't peel it apart. And it's just a huge pain. But so yeah, I basically boil it down to beef and eggs. And there was a period of time where I was having nausea on the carnivore diet, and it was persistent. I couldn't figure out what it was. I started going down the histamine rabbit hole. So egg whites in particular are high in histamine. So I cut out eggs altogether, and I did feel a little bit better. And then I stopped smoking my meats, because when you smoke meats for a long period of time, the histamine content builds up. So that seemed to help a little bit. But ultimately, what I ended up finding out was, for whatever reason, I'm the odd person out. I can't eat exogenous salt. So, everybody says on a carnivore diet, make sure you're eating your salt, make sure you're getting your electrolytes. I can't do that. It seems like my body extracts enough electrolytes from the meat that anything extra throws my system out of balance. And it was causing nausea. So I stopped salt after watching one of Bella's videos that she doesn't eat salt. And I thought, well, okay, I'm just eating beef and salt and water. I guess I can eliminate the salt and try it. And lo and behold, 3 days in, the nausea started to go away. And 5 days into that, it's completely gone. And I feel 1,000% better.
So no salt on your meat either?
No salt on my meat, but I now have reintroduced eggs back in, and I cook my eggs in tallow, but I still don't eat butter, and I still don't eat bacon.
You ever try just doing the yolks?
At a restaurant. I do. I'll have just the yolks. Sometimes I'll make ground beef and then just break a raw egg yolk into the ground beef and eat that. But yeah, whatever's simple and easy.
Yeah. I'd like to do more yolks, but because the separating of the two is like, this is another step. I'll just eat the whole thing. It's great.
Right. I love that.
Well, I watched Bella talk about that too. Like she talked about making a raw egg yolk, like a dip for something that you were using a meat to have a dip for. And I thought, I never thought about doing it raw. I love cooking them just to the point where they're runny still. But yeah, and eggs, I struggle with eggs too, with the egg whites, and especially if they are vegetarian fed eggs, which I used to get Eggland's Best because I thought, oh, well, these are the best, right? They're white. I didn't even know eggs weren't white until somebody in another country said, why are your eggs so white over there? I said, what do you mean? Isn't that the way eggs always are? What are they changing the color of the eggs? I don't even know how they do it, but I raise chickens and none of their eggs come out pure white. They look more bluish in color if they are white. So I used to buy those thinking I was getting the good stuff. I didn't realize I was getting this is not a natural diet for these animals. And I heard something the other day from Malia over at I forget the name of the company she was with, International Health or something. But anyway, it was the last carnivore conversation. If you're watching, you can go back and check it out. And she was talking about that there's something about chickens that makes them actually kind of like a ruminant. And I didn't know what she was talking about, but I want to look more into that. Apparently they
Interesting.
separate out stuff, especially when it comes to making their eggs. So
Interesting.
I love eggs. I just didn't do them for the first year and a half I was on Lion Diet. And for anybody watching this that is wondering, why are they talking about some do eggs and some don't? There's just so many different ways you can do it, and you find what you work with better than some things you don't work with as well. But for the most part, it's just eat meat and be happy.
Yeah, I agree.
Salt was important for me, but it wasn't important for Adam. And I didn't know that it wouldn't be important for Adam. I thought it was that, it was a key trigger for me to know that I could do all meat when I found out that was the missing ingredient for energy that I was missing. But I didn't realize that maybe my physiology was different enough from Adam's to where Adam didn't need that. So, that's one of the reasons why when people will contact me and say, I've been doing Lion Diet for a week and I have no energy. And I said, how much salt are you putting on your meat? How much salt are you putting with your water? A lot of times they're using none. I'll tell them, you may want to try adding some salt to both of those for a while and see how you do. And then they get back to me and tell me that their energy is back. But I have had a handful. I think it's more people need salt than the ones that don't, it seems like to me.
Right.
I don't know if
I think
that's
so
been
too.
your experience too.
I think so too. So when I first started the carnivore diet, I did get a little bit of feeling like the keto flu. So that's the only time that I have felt like getting sick at all, was in those initial few weeks. But since then, I haven't had a cold. I haven't had anything happen. So now historically, I've always been pretty healthy in that regard. So it could be nothing, because it's probably been 15 years since I had the flu. I've had the flu one time in my life, and I've never had a flu jab. So, once I turned adult age, 18 or whatever, I'd never gone in for any kind of a yearly shot or anything like that. And I never got the flu. I got it once.
Yeah. Well, I started getting it less. I noticed when I stopped getting the annual vaccine for it, because every time I would get it, they would tell me, oh, well, we gave you the wrong vaccine. Well, if you're going to give me the wrong vaccine every time, I don't want it.
Right. Oh my goodness.
But that was just, like I say, when we start talking about the V word on these shows, we got to be careful.
Right.
All I know is that was my opinion of it. I don't think all vaccines are bad, but I think that there's a lot of them that are questionable, to say the least.
Yeah,
We'll leave that at
Whoever,
that.
if people think that they need it, go ahead and get it. It's for me and myself. I was just, again, lazy. I didn't want to have to make an appointment and go get it. It wasn't really that important to me.
So now you're down to basically eggs and beef for the most part?
Yep. And
I
love
noticed when we were at that restaurant the other night, you were like, no, I'll pass on anything but beef, please.
Yep. Yeah. When they bring out the stuff, especially the stuff with garlic on it, I'm like, I can't do garlic. So the couple times that I've tried garlic or onion, strangely enough, I have the absolute wildest dreams. Like, they are really wild dreams. And I don't know why. And it's every time. So I tried some jalapeno mustard once. And I had the craziest dreams after that. Otherwise, it's just, regular dreams here and there. But every time I have those spices, it's like some kind of psychedelic or something.
Well, that's another thing. Like you said, a lot of people, we talked about using spices or not. The reason I don't use spices is it was gut related. If you can eat spices and be fine with it, I say do spices. I know I got when I was trying to get my wife to do the carnivore, and she's doing it more than before. She's eating a lot more meat now, but I got her the carnivore bar. It's kind of hard to figure out where to put this where you can see it. This is the
Nice.
zesty garlic, because she likes to have a little bit of flavor. I usually just get the salted one myself. I don't know if you tried these before. They're basically like pemmican. Oh, I love them. But I tried the zesty garlic because I used to love garlic, and I thought, I'll give it a try. It's no sugar in there. It's just grass-finished beef, grass-finished tallow, pluck seasoning mix, Redmond real salt. I'm not sure what pluck seasoning mix is. That's probably the garlic part. But I noticed that I felt like I could taste that garlic for like 4 hours afterward. So even though it wasn't bad, it was like, that's a bit much for me because I'm just not used to having it anymore. But she loved it. So
Yeah, I love those carnivore bars. I eat the unsalted plain ones,
yeah, that's what I got there.
which they're not the greatest flavor unsalted. I'd love to have salted, but like I said, the salt just it doesn't agree with me. And when I do have bacon, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like I just put a salt lick in my mouth.
Yeah,
Like,
and sometimes bacon's got a lot of sugar. You can taste it immediately when you're on a carnivore diet. I know that.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I know that one of the things I like to do is I'll take buy this Wagyu beef tallow from Chicago, South Chicago Packing on Amazon, and
Hmm.
the consistency of this tallow is like whipped cream almost. Instead of tallow
Wow.
like you normally would feel, it's kind of thick when you pick it up. This is like whipped
Hmm.
cream, or maybe even whipped cake topping is what it looks like. And I'll dip the carnivore bar in that, so I get even more fat with it. But
Oh my goodness.
good stuff. So beef and eggs, and you've been doing that for how long now? The
Well,
beef and
in
eggs
four
part.
months it'll be. Well, the beef and eggs part, I have experimented in there with just lion diet and other things, but probably I would say it's been ever since maybe February of this year. I think that's when I basically figured out that it was salt that was causing
Okay.
my nausea. And then I'm like, I'm going back to the eggs because I love eggs. So,
So what if you wanted to try anything else like chicken, or and you already said that the bacon kind of has a stronger flavor now that you're used to not having it. I noticed that as well when I get away from it for a while. It's like, this isn't as good as I thought it was. I think part of it is because our mouths are so overwhelmed with sensations on the standard American diet that we have to have our meats covered in marinades and coated with sugar and molasses and whatever else we can do, because otherwise we wouldn't taste anything. But I
that's
guess the
true.
point I'm getting at is I want to be able to have anybody who's watching this know that you tweak the diet that fits you as far as what
Hmm.
meats you're going to eat, whether you're going to include cheese, whether you're going to include salt. But if you stick with meat and water, or in my case, I drink a lot of club soda because I love the bubbles. I couldn't give up my bubbles. I gave up my Coke a long time ago, but not the bubbles. Uh, and it's worked great. Is there anything missing from that you've done?
No, not really. So I've tried chicken, and it seems to have a sort of an inflammatory effect on me. I can kind of feel the arthritis symptoms coming back when I eat chicken. Maybe it's the type of chicken that it's not organic or free range or whatever, but I just kind of feel crummy eating chicken now, which is crazy because prior to going carnivore, you're eating everything under the sun, and chicken was the meat to have, right? It's
Yeah.
easy to cook or whatever, it's cheap, and God forbid you'd ever have a steak. It'd have to be a special occasion to have a steak
Yeah.
because they're so expensive because you're spending money on all this other garbage.
Yep.
So, but chicken, I don't eat chicken anymore. Pork, pulled pork, occasionally I'll have, and it's a similar sort of result. I just don't feel is optimal eating the pork. Yeah, and to your point, people that are watching this, I fell into the trap of carnivore is this, right? Like this specific way that so and so says on this channel or that channel or an average of those channels or whatever. It's not. It's what you make it. You make it tailored to you and how you feel. So don't be afraid to experiment, like taking out eggs or taking out butter or taking out bacon, only eating lamb instead of having the beef. Experiment and find out what works best for you, is what I say. Be the captain of your own ship.
Yeah. And I will add a word of caution with experimentation from the starting with lion diet side. My experimentation experience was nothing really was incorporating again without causing problems. So I was just derailing myself on a regular basis with something, and that can be a little bit upsetting. And then you can get into a stall, or your weight won't drop for a little bit, or you can't get rid of those love handles or something like that. Just get back to normal and be patient. But when you do experiment, you're going to run into sometimes things that aren't going to be giving you the results that you wanted. And then you just got to know, okay, that's all I changed, and this got worse, so I'm going to change that back. We're taking that out. And then if you want to
Yep.
try something else, I would still say give it a couple of weeks for you to get over what you just tried, to get back to some homeostasis that you were in before you try to experiment again. But you could see how a period of doing that over a few months and finding out everything you tried was not helping you, that can derail you. So be careful with your experimentation in some regard, but also don't be afraid to see if it's going to work for you. I think the scariest thing for me about experimentation is you're going to find something that you love so much that even though it's hurting you, you won't want to get away from it. Like butter and coffee were a couple of hard ones for me. Coffee gives me, I know it gives me more anxiety, and then it also causes my rosacea to flare up real bright red because I was doing it a lot again lately. And I was like, man, I see that pink and I think maybe it's an infection. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's allergies. But whenever I quit coffee, it goes away. So it's hard to quit those things that you love. So yeah, you're going to run into bumps and rough spots. But overall, even with all those difficulties and challenges that come from trying to figure out what to eat, because there's nobody there, used to be you'd feel like you could call a nutritionist or a doctor and ask for some advice. Now it's like, who do you go to for advice? Most of the time you got to come here to YouTube or somewhere where they're like Rumble, where they're allowing free speech to be had and people are talking about this kind of thing.
Right.
So yeah, it's been a heck of a road for me too, man. You're being able to turn brain damage around just blows my mind though. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but I mean, you'd say you're like 100% from where you were? You're 100% from where you were before you started.
Beyond a shadow of a doubt. Yeah, without question. I feel like I'm 110% because before I had the accident, I was impaired, brain fog and all these other issues and problems, eating a standard American diet, right? So I was already maybe 90% in using my brain capacity. And then I get this additional 10% that they deemed that I lost. I literally feel like I'm in my 20s again. And if I didn't have certain issues in my cervical spine with ruptured discs and their impingements on my spinal cord, if I didn't have that issue, I have no doubt that I could do the things that I was doing in martial arts.
Wow.
I'm actually sprinting and doing all kinds of crazy exercises and stuff now and like I said before, exercise was a 4-letter word to me. I think it still is, but I just have so much extra energy now that I have to do something with it. I feel like getting up and moving around, and I think that's the natural thing that a human is supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we're meant to just sit around. So
I think it's one of the things that drives me crazy about sitting for all the work that I do for the most part. I got to get out and find reasons to get outside. I get frustrated from sitting too much, so I can feel that. Well, that is truly amazing, brother, to know that you have had not only 100% return from something that's supposed to be, this is it. You're stuck with this, to being better than you were before through a change in a way of eating.
I can actually, so before, and the therapist would always have to have a couple people around, and they would do tests, like close your eyes, standing up, and then they would see which direction you were falling and all these sorts of tests and things. But there always had to be somebody there to catch me, because as soon as I closed my eyes, almost immediately I would fall over. I can close my eyes now and walk around. I could, if I was blindfolded, I can walk around and feel, where I'm at and all that sort of thing. And there's no vertigo effects. There's no falling over immediately. There's zero issues in regards to balance whatsoever. And I don't have any more motor tics. So, I would say that's at minimum 100%.
And where would you be if you'd followed your doctor's advice after this accident on how to handle everything?
To be honest, I'd probably be in a worse space than where I am. I definitely would be more than likely more depressed than what I was, potentially even on medications to the point where, it got bad enough that I'd have to seek help. Um, there was an instance early on, once I had the accident, that I noticed I had to stop doing my photography work. And I didn't share this earlier, but I bent down in order to help a kid, get posed for a shot. And I stood back up, and almost immediately, as soon as I stood back up, I closed my eyes for a brief second, and I almost fell over on top of this kid.
Oh my goodness.
And I thought, I can't do this. So that's why I quit my photography business for a short time and went back to full time doing the engineering stuff. So that was a tough road to hoe. And then once I went through that whole regiment with 2 hours a day and stuff like that, and finally got healthy again, I quit the engineering job and went back to my photography because I knew how to manage the condition at that point. But initially it was scary.
So you got a whole new life.
Yes, absolutely. And I get to thank Dante, the guy that made it all possible. I'm not kidding you. If it wasn't for your example, and it just being so compelling, I don't think there was any other person that I've come across and watched their testimony that I would have resonated with as much as yours. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, Adam, I can't tell you how much it means to me, because I know we talked about it some when you were here, that I don't realize the effect sometimes, because so many times I'm stuck behind the camera rather than out where I can meet people. But when you and Carrie came over and both had the same story about how I was the one that got you in this direction, and then took you down the rabbit hole, and how it's changed your lives, it's been the closest thing to something that has really hit me hard. I read a lot of comments where people talk about how those changes are, and it's hard to believe that with my history of hedonistic, self-seeking desires, behavior of somebody who was not, I wasn't criminal, but definitely not seeking to help anybody else really, get ahead. I was seeking only my own things. To have the opportunity to do something with my life that changes other people's lives for the better is so valuable to me, and I can't even hardly grasp it. So I thank you for coming and sharing, not only for my benefit, but especially for the people who are watching this, who might be in a hopeless situation right now, feeling like something that they're dealing with, whether it was a brain injury or any of the number of the things that you mentioned, or any of the autoimmune issues that I've mentioned over before. I've heard about, you talked about your neck issue. That was pain from the accident as well?
That was a prior injury.
Okay.
But yeah, the lower back injury, sciatica, that was from the accident as well.
And just curiously, have you noticed improvements in that area since the carnivore diet?
Yes. That's almost 100% better. Occasionally I will feel it, but it's if I'm sitting for long periods of time. Days
you
on
could be
end.
perfectly healthy and be sitting for long periods of time and have that hurt too. So
Right.
yeah. Well, it's just amazing. It's amazing what this diet has done. I had no idea when I started my journey that was supposed to be 6 weeks of trying the lion diet, because I was desperate, that it was going to turn into this channel or this opportunity to reach even just you. And I want to reach more people. Thank you for coming on and helping me do that. Thank you for helping me
buddy,
do that
because
by coming on here.
Yeah, absolutely. If it wasn't for you, Carrie wouldn't be doing the documentary. I wouldn't be helping him do the documentary. And Jordan Peterson's wife, Tammy, she's involved now, and we're getting some big names involved now in terms of marketing and distribution. So as a result of Dante, right? Like this wouldn't have happened without you. So
Well,
Thank you.
Carrie's doing the heavy lifting on making that happen, but I'm glad that I was able to be the impetus for getting that started because it's nice to be a part of something that is changing the world for the better. Anything that relieves some of the suffering going on out there, I can't tell you how much it means to me to be a part of that. And I love being a part of this community, and I love that you're a part of this community. I love that I got to meet you the other day, and thank you for coming on. Is there anything else that you feel like you need to end with or share, that maybe you want to tell us anything else about the documentary that doesn't reveal too much that's coming up, like maybe a possible release date or anything?
I wish I had a release date. So Carrie and I, we're just two regular guys, right? That he decided to do a documentary. I'm like, I have some experience with photography and composition and lighting. I'll help you out. So we need a lot of help when it comes to the marketing and distribution portion of it and the post-production. So we're working with a group right now that's helping us in that regard. So that's going to be the driver of when the potential release is. Our goal has been summer of 2025, but depending on how these next few meetings go with the marketing and distribution discussions, we'll know more then. But yeah, it's not going to be before summer of 2025. I wish it was now, but
Hey,
that's
somebody's
why
doing
we
it
started.
now.
Right, exactly. So if anybody wants to learn more about the documentary, it's healinghumanity.movie, and you can go there and check things out. We have a cancer petition. Jeff DeProsperous had his protocol on there that anyone that's suffering with cancer, his protocol and what he was doing in relation to carnivore diet and extra things that he was doing to help himself with stage 4 colon cancer is on there. If you want to sign the petition, that would be great. The point of the petition is to try to use those signatures to drive change within the current system that we have so that metabolic therapies are presented as at least as an option for cancer care, because right now it's atrocious in what is being offered to these folks and the solutions. It's either you hack and slash or you're being poisoned, and then the post care with a lot of these things is they're telling them basically to eat sugary foods, which ends up in more cancer. So we've got a few sections on the website there to help people out with, hopefully with quick wins now, whether it's women's health or diabetes, cancer, and things like that. And another thing that Carrie and I did was start healinghumanity.life, which is a membership website where we have weekly Zoom calls in order to try to get people those wins now before the movie comes out. Just because we knew that there's going to be some place where people need to go if they're inspired by the movie or the series, that they want to go and drive deeper in their health. Plus, we can get those people those quick wins now, right? The people that need a sense of community or they need to ask direct questions. So we started that. But yeah, we kind of had the foresight that needed to happen because we're not exactly sure when the film is going to be completed. So
Yeah. Well, it gives us something to look forward to next year then. That's good. All right. Well, brother,
yep.
man, I appreciate you coming on and sharing that story with us and helping us know more about the healinghumanity.movie and healinghumanity.life. Correct?
Yes.
Got two different sites there. All right. And you can check out Adam's YouTube channel at Carnivore Today. And
Yes.
it's just been amazing getting to know you, Adam, and getting to know your story. I sure do appreciate you coming on and sharing this with us. I'm going to go ahead and end this in just a second. I want you to stick around for a minute so we can have some closing discussion with each other. But
Sure.
For those of you who tuned in on this one, I sure do appreciate you. Say, screw it. I'm going to get up and do it. You can start yours today. Start turning your life around. Start getting your health going back in the right direction. Start to feel like you got the energy to do the stuff you want to do. Get that brain fog out of your head and just enjoy life again. That's all I got, guys. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Adam.
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?
Hey, it's Dante Ferrigno. I just wanted to thank you first of all for watching this video, but I also wanted to tell you about my merch shop. I have a link in the description for a bunch of different items I've put together for you to be able to show your support for the carnivore lifestyle, and every purchase helps me to keep doing what I'm doing here on Ferrigno Freedom.